Okay, I think we will begin right now. So, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining in on this session on women empowerment. So, there has been a slight change, and I'll be moderating today. Right, very interesting also for me to moderate a women empowerment session. I'm sure we're going to have an excellent time. So, I would like to confirm that Chiamaka and Chioma can hear me and that you are here. Hey, Chioma. Hey, Chiamaka.
Hey, Musa. Yes, I can hear you and I'm here.
All right. Will your video be on?
Yes, please. I was just waiting for
Okay,
the event to start.
no problem. Chiamaka, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, Musa.
All right, excellent. So yes, once again, welcome to this session on women's empowerment. Before we start, I would just like to talk about Ayoka Fellowship, a bit about Porter Africa and also Casale Africa. So basically, Ayoka Fellowship is a fellowship under Porta de Africa, and it is co-organized by Casa de Africa, which is a cultural organization in Spain that handles the Spanish government's relation with the African continent. Basically, Porta de Africa is a think and do tank, a youth think and do tank, and it's an NGO here in Spain as well. So basically, Ayoka Fellowship was created as a way to ensure that European citizens and African citizens, right, spread across the continent, are able to work together, especially people that have projects or have businesses running. So all the fellows that were selected, 10 in total, as at this stage, the final stage, are people that are either engaged in a project or have started their own project as well. So that's a bit of the background on the organizations hosting this event. And now for today's session itself, I'm just going to explain what we'll be doing before we start proper. So it's basically a 2-hour session, and what we'll be doing first of all, it's opening as we're doing right now. Then we will be presenting the speakers and the fellows, Chiamaka, Julieta, and Chioma in this case. After that, we'll be having a mini discussion, a Q&A session whereby we'll be asking questions, and hopefully, the fellows and the guests will be responding to those questions. After that, Chioma will be presenting her project, what she has been doing, Cafe Scientific Woman. And after that, we'll have another room for discussion with the fellows and the guests. To conclude, we'll allow the audience to also ask questions as well. So, in the spirit of understanding, I'm going to start. So, yes, today's session is on women's empowerment. And I think it's a very interesting topic, most especially in this generation, or will I even say in this decade, for two reasons, in my opinion. First of all, it's because women's right has increased. I think there has been a lot of changes, especially from the last century to this century in terms of political rights, in terms of social rights, in terms of like culturally how people relate to women in different areas in the workplace, at home, etc. And the roles that are attached to that. I know that Julieta particularly is very, very deep in women's rights, so it will be interesting to listen to her point of view on that. And so, yeah, so that's the first reason for me, just how it has changed. And also the second reason, it's how the world is also being more conscious about how to make empower women essentially, right? So there are criticisms to this in the sense of like, some people might criticize the whole concept of women empowerment because of the language being used, which I understand perfectly well. But I think more profoundly, we have to really recognize and be truthful with the fact that when compared to men in society, right, women basically are disenfranchised, and women do not enjoy equal access to opportunities. They do not enjoy equal rights in certain spheres of life, right? So these things are necessary to take into account. If not, we will not be able to progress the things that are blocking, women's rights, women's empowerment, and women's access to opportunities. And in light of this, I would like to begin like our questions. But before I do that, I'll make an introduction of the people we'll be speaking out to today. So I'll start with our guest, then I'll go for Chioma. I'll start with Julieta. So Julieta is a project development manager in Fundación Mujeres, where she volunteers and is currently in pursuit of a master's degree in gender and diversity from the University of Oviedo. She's a Global Studies graduate student from the Pompeu Fabra University, and she also has studied the master's degree in construction and representation of cultural identities at the University of Barcelona. Furthermore, she studies the humanities degree simultaneously at the Open University of Catalonia, and she's someone that's eager to learn. She's born from migrant parents. The inclusion of difference has always been inculcated into her reality. Moreover, during her semester in the American University of Beirut, she discovered the academic field she's passionate about, that is the intersection between gender and Orientalism. Precisely, she oversaw the Voices subsection, identity section in the Outlook, that is a newspaper at the university, at the American University of Beirut. She has learned from experiences of the people, from their emotions, and from their effects as a result of the outlook. Thus, her highest ambition is to give voices to the voiceless, to speak about injustice, and to raise awareness. That is why she's most interested in giving access to knowledge, which she thinks is of vital importance. So, thank you, Julieta, for joining us. And nice to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you all again for being here and for inviting me to speak. So yeah, it's an honor.
Excellent. I'll be moving over to Chiamaka now. Chiamaka Chundu is an accomplished development professional and project manager currently working at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in Nigeria. With a Master's of Science degree in Development Economics and Policy, Chiamaka possesses strong competence in program design, implementation of development interventions across Africa, and project coordination skills. Chiamaka is passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion, youth and women leadership, and social innovation and sustainability. Her interests lie in catalyzing the actualization of the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, promoting enterprise sustainability, and developing leadership and life skills in youths and women. Chiamaka has a wealth of experience working in the social sector in Nigeria. She has led teams responsible for designing and implementing various leadership and life skills and enterprise projects, developed curriculums as well in ethics, leadership, and enterprise, and facilitated training across various youth groups and teachers. Chiamaka is skilled in building and managing key stakeholder and partner relationship, which has contributed significantly to the success of the project she has managed. She is driven, organized, and detail-oriented professional with a track record of delivering results. Overall, Chiamaka is an outstanding professional with a passion for driving social change and promoting sustainable development. She is a trailblazer in her field and continues to make significant contributions to the development sector in Nigeria. Chiamaka, nice to see your face. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Musa. Am I supposed to say something or are we just
No, I mean you answered, so that's fine. There will
okay,
be
thank you so
room
much.
to respond to questions very shortly. And then we'll go to Chioma, who is our fellow for today. So unfortunately, we are supposed to have two fellows, but Amtu is unavailable today, so that is why only Chioma will be available. So I'll just get to Chioma. First of all, I'll start with Chioma herself before I go to her project. So Chioma is a graduate of Polymer and Textile Engineering with a second class upward division from the Federal University of Technology, FUTS Owerri, and is currently in pursuit of a master's degree in industrial chemistry from Ebonyi State University in Nigeria. She also has gained good business knowledge within the oil and gas sector as a business consultant at Nepal Oil and as a business development team lead at Geo Travels. Currently, she's the CEO of an eco-focused travel and tourism startup called Grand Experia, alongside serving on the board and leadership of Rolex Foundation. Chioma has also held public service-related leadership positions, against which she was elected as the Deputy Speaker of the Fourth Assembly of Nigerian Youth Parliament, representing the interests of the Nigerian youths from 2019 to 2021. She has also served as the technical assistant to the Secretary to Ebonyi State's government from 2016 to 2018. Beyond her industrial and leadership exposure, Chioma has interest in STEM leadership, especially in STEM policy making, nanotechnology, and how it can be applied to make the environment safer. Chioma was accepted into Ayoka Fellowship because of her project, which is called Scientific Woman. And we'll just give a brief example, a brief bio of Cafe Scientific Woman. So the practical idea of Cafe Scientific Woman is simply to skillfully talk about science and technology in a non-academic and informal setting that emphasizes engagements around behaviors, beliefs, and way of thinking of a people, and shaping how that will impact collective societal development. At the end of each cafe, a communique will be sent to relevant governmental and non-governmental organizations, NGOs, to foster implementation of sustainable solutions derived by the participants of each cafe. Launched as one of the projects of the Rolex Foundation in 2017, the Cafe Scientific Woman has only remained in Lagos, reaching a small portion of the Southwest region. Hence, Cafe Scientific Ebonyi will be launched, or was launched, sorry, in 2022 through the entire Southeast and South-South regions of Nigeria. The interesting thing about Cafe Scientific Woman is that it seems like it is focused on only SDG 4, but over the next 5 years, different cafe themes will be centered around SDGs 3, 6, 7, 9, 11, 12, and 13. So good evening to you, Chioma. Thank you for joining us today as well. I think you're muted.
Good evening.
All right. So this is going to be an interesting discussion, and I'll just go straight into it, right? We'll be starting with the questions. And we have 30 minutes for this session. And basically, I'll be starting by asking the first question, right? What are the key barriers that prevents women in Africa and Europe from achieving their full potential? And how can we work to overcome this obstacle? So it's a question that has two children, I would say. So first of all, what prevents women in Africa and Europe from achieving their full potential? And I would like you guys to answer maybe from your own fields and from your own experience, maybe academically or maybe through your work. And also, like aside those obstacles, I would like you to say, okay, what can be solutions to these obstacles? I would like to start with Julieta.
Okay, so well, first of all, I believe all of us here present are aware of the huge historical and current gap that has been preventing and still prevents us women from achieving their full potential. And the causes are rooted in society and are inherent to the patriarchy, which combines with, well, we know this is a system which permeates every other sphere of life. So the academic life, we know that there is inequality in all of the aspects of life. So, well, I can talk only for my European perspective and experience. I believe that one of the greatest challenges is to understand our own oppression. What I want to raise and criticize here is the post-feminist discourse that denies the need for further action. I mean, by presenting gender equality as a natural part of Western values, which Orientalistic people do, and most male white academic have been doing, well, from ages now, there are at least two fallacies that operate. I mean, there are two arguments that are fake and that act in detriment of all women. And firstly, it is racist per se. I mean, it is common in Europe and also in North America to look for the world problems outside the bubble. So often white feminists fall into the discourse that has been highly criticized with reason by Abu Lughod, for instance. And this is the discourse of saving our Muslim sisters or saving or female friends from the developing world. I mean, so in addition to being paternalistic, it denies the agency of these women, as it depicts them as passive and awaiting for liberation. So on the other hand, this rhetoric also acts in detriment of Western women, as it presents them as already emancipated and liberated. And there are still, for instance, regarding the question per se, there are still gender stereotypes, discrimination, unequal access to education, legal constraints, gender-based pay gaps. Here in Fundación Mujeres, I revised the planes de igualdad. They are the equality plans that all enterprises are compulsory, well, they are obligated to upload them in its public domain, and they still acknowledge that women get paid less than men. So, and no one does anything. So yeah, there is an unequal distribution of domestic and caregiving responsibilities. That here, it's what I see the most from the area from I am working, that many of the women aren't able to empower themselves because of this huge pressure that they have from home. So, well, should I stop? And because I feel like started talking and
No, it's fine. It's excellent. I was actually like writing down what you're saying. So fundamentally, you said patriarchy, and basically, like because of patriarchy, we have to understand our own oppression and how racism comes to the bubble because of white feminism, and how that also creates its own paternalistic view, especially when it comes to the color of your skin, etc., and how that falsely acts as if white women are freer than they are supposed to be, which is untrue, as you said, for example, from labor relations. This is very interesting. And I think it's connected to one of the other questions, but thank you so much for your contribution so far. I'll go to Chiamaka, then I'll come to Chioma. So Chiamaka, to you, what are the obstacles fundamentally from your own worldview and from your own perspective, right, that women face?
Thank you, Musa. I think I might be adjusting my video on and off, depending on how the bandwidth goes. Okay. I imagine that I'm forgiven in advance for doing that. So thank you so much. So for me, right, in terms of obstacles that women face, I think it goes different ways, and we can think about it, across different spectrum. Depending on what sector, that you're speaking from. So there's a political side to it, there is in education, there's literally in everywhere, gender is something that is cross-cutting. But if I'll speak largely to what I'm now trying to call the cultural dimension of it, right, which is where I feel like the conversations don't come out a lot. We typically focus more on professional sides, getting women to break the glass ceiling, which is two-way, right? There is a part where the organization has to be more intentional around building a female pipeline, just to ensure that you continue to have women rising, to the highest levels in their organization. So that exists. But there's also the part of what keeps these women from even showing up, because that's another side. The women don't even show up. We find out, they're not showing up, to reach for these opportunities. And it's not because they don't want to, right? It's also because, there's certain barriers, for example, the caregiving role that they've taken on in their homes, in which case they do not have, the adequate support to be able to let go of that support. To just let's go and go all in. So that's even it's sort of like professional settings. So that happens, right? Which is where we need more men to sort of lean in and take on more of that role, right? So I believe that's definitely one thing for me that I'm focusing more and more on having conversation about, which is men leaning in to take some more of that role off of women. Because to be fair, I don't have the final stats on it, but I do think that, women have started to come up, in the ranks in certain organizations. It might not be as widespread as it is, but I'll speak to Nigeria and to Africa. have started to come up, and they're starting to face certain resistances, right? So some of the work that the women empowerment movement has been doing is starting to yield some results, right? We're seeing women, earn, double income households as opposed to single income households. We're seeing some of that happen. But then there's also the cultural barrier that men then face, to say, oh, will I let my woman, continue to contribute in this home, and all of that. So that fine balancing act is what is now required. It's like the barrier that we then need to break, right? Of both parties sort of realizing that the household and the home front is a partnership, right? That you need to be able to build together to get the income coming into the family, and it sort of balances out. So I think for now, that's where I sort of see the big cultural gap, or that barrier facing women the most, because it does a lot of things, emotionally and psychologically, to whether the woman even shows up for the roles that you're opening up for her to take, and whether she brings her full self even into being in that particular role. So that's the way that I will frame it. But then, of course, if I take it into the political side of things, and I know, for example, in Nigeria, we're just in sort of like a political transition season. The part to that as well is certain sectors. The one learning is certain sectors being intentional about having more women come in, right? There's a raving debate around, affirmative action. Is it something that we should go into? Is it, that I think that debate will go on for a long time in a place like Nigeria and in Africa as a whole. People will typically take Rwanda as an example, but every context is different, like you say, in development, right? Every place is context specific. In Nigeria, the chiefs are definitely different, right? There's always the part of, the meetings that I even had for this political things to happen. The meetings I had like really late in the night, is that at the time that she really even wants anybody to be out, talk more of a woman who doesn't even feel safe, right? So there are also concerns around safety and security for women, right? Which is a big deal, if we even talk about the post-COVID and the GBV cases that we had. So there is also safety and security of women in that regard, and just industries to want more women to pull in, right? I feel like it's such a question as to ask men to say, do you really want women to be in this space, right? So that's a question that even men need to answer and say, you know what, let's work together to make these sectors more friendly, right? For women to get in as well. So I think I'll pause here. I can go on and on, but I'll just take a pause here. And I hope that was useful for the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Chiamaka. Very interesting points. So first of all, like I love the fact that it's kind of like you zoom into what Coletta was saying, in the sense of, Coletta spoke about the racism aspect of it, and she ended on the note, that like, this is erroneous, because at the end of the day, woman is kind of like a block, right? And what you do is that you are not seeing the picture actually. And what you did was to dive into the cultural effects, right? Though you focused on Nigeria, basically you stated how, on the organizational side, organizations have to be more intentional. And this is largely because of the barriers that is largely drawn from the caregiving roles that women have at home, right, which prohibits or allows them to work. According to the World Bank 2022, I remember reading that about 50% of women, right, are employed, as opposed to 80% of global labor participation of men. So we see a 30% gap basically, right, and we can attribute that primarily to probably the caregiving roles that you stated, Chiamaka. And then on the political side, that's very interesting because I love the question that you asked, right? Men have to ask the questions if they want women in the political sphere as well, right? Because if they don't want it to be much tougher for men. So thank you so much, Chiamaka. We'll come back to this point, your point, and Julieta's point soon. But before we go there, I would like to hear Chioma's own views on what she thinks are the cultural barriers of, not the culture, the barriers of women generally, right, from her own perspective or worldview. Yeah, me too, Choma.
Okay, so thank you. I think I'm going to be contributing more from the STEM aspect because I definitely agree with Julieta and I agree with Chamaka on the points that they have made, especially, like being from Nigeria and from Africa and having also represented like youths. It's such a key question that Chamaka raised about the fact that men have to ask themselves, like, do we want women in this space? Because one of the key issues about that is that because the space is already saturated by men themselves, a lot of your success is really hinged or backed up by the people who already are key players in that sector. So like in the political space, when you have men who are already key players, I mean, they are they are the decision makers there. So it is harder for like a woman to break in and all of that. So I definitely agree with that point. And like from the science, technology, engineering, mathematics point of view, my research with Ayoka focused on why is it that, Africans were not really solving like indigenous problems themselves. Given, for example, the COVID-19 pandemic, and even till now, there's been no vaccine that has been produced by any one African nation. And you're wondering, why is there such a dearth in, research and development platforms or, sector that we're able to solve key issues that relate to like climate change, that relate to like health, why we're not able to solve that? And so Cafe Scientific Woman started, to look at the fact that at the end of the day, most of these key issues are going to be solved by science and people who have like skills in science. And we also looked at from the point of view that if a woman is already disposed to science and she is the person who nurtures, especially like in the African context, right? She's the one who nurtures the children. She's the one who would make a lot of decisions regarding the children. Then it is imperative that if we definitely want to up our game in research and development, then we need to get the women on board and, to be on board with this idea. That's the reason why the research started to target women. And, we also looked at why is it that really even before this research, there have been no efforts, and why are women not even in the STEM field in the first place? Because you see research findings from other researchers who have found that in the STEM fields, only about 28% women worked in the STEM field. And you're like, why does this exist? And it boiled down to 4 major reasons. One of the reasons is women did not understand how to balance work with family or societal expectations. Again, circling back to what Chiamaka already said about the fact that, the woman is the primary caregiver. And because of that, definitely, like if a child is sick, the society looks to the mother. If anything happens in the family, like a child gets injured, something as little as like a little injury, the first question that would be asked is, where was the mother? Nobody really says, where was the father? So this societal expectations, women didn't understand how to balance it. Then the second is lack of role models to emulate. So, and of course, like that makes sense because if you look at the fact that only 28% women work in the STEM field, you find that there's really no representation. And once you cannot see someone like you doing this, it's really hard for you to be able to break into that sector or enter into the sector. Again, like in politics, why women find it more difficult? Because there's so many men and they are the decision makers, right? And the third reason is lack of access to platforms, opportunities, and tools to aid career growth. So at the end of the day, if you didn't like have support, if you didn't have somebody encouraging you, and sometimes you have little challenges, but to you, they're like really big challenges and may just take someone to say, oh, been there, done that. You can definitely explore this way and see if that works for you. And then that's what makes or mars, your decision to continue on a path or to not continue on that path. And then the final thing is that, you know, generally the prejudice and the discrimination. And again, this circles back to the fact that there are definitely more men than women. And, you know, sometimes it's even hard to take things like a joke in the work organization. You walk into a boardroom, oftentimes you see 8 men and you may see just 1 woman in that boardroom. And like, you know how men joke, you know, they're really rougher than the women. You know, women are more sensitive. Women are more disposed to be a lot more quiet about certain things, but men are like loud, rough around the edges generally. And so even sometimes, you know, you find it difficult to take a joke and to have certain conversations, you know, because this is not like your circle. So we found that these were some of the key reasons why women were not in the STEM field. And of course, like, I don't know where the conversation is going to lead us, but then the research also goes ahead to prefer a solution as to how we may be able to overcome these challenges that exist for women in STEM. So I think that these are, you know, some of the key issues that I can talk about with respect to women in the STEM field.
Whoa, okay. That was facts. All right. Thank you so much, Joma, for this. I especially love your 4 points, right? Especially stemming from what you said about 20%. I don't know, like if you meant in Nigeria or if that was like 20% in Nigeria or
that's a global statistics. That's
okay,
a
so
global statistics.
globally,
Of course, like in
20%.
certain sectors, in the STEM field, you may find more women in than in others, and then in some you may find like really, really very little women. So on an average, taking like an average, that 28% is a global statistics.
All right. So science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, 28% for women. And I love your 4 things, right? Which exactly, I mean, you drew from what Shamaka said, basically, which is, you know, the role of men. They are the decision makers. So a lot of the success or the access that women will have rely on these decision makers or stakeholders, right? Which dominate and control the access, right? And you spoke about how, number one, women did not like work-life balance for women. That was an issue, right? Like, what was more important? Is it my work? Is it my life? You know, how do I balance it? That is an issue. You also spoke about like lack of representation in the sense of role models. So there are no, so you do not see a lot of women in the public, right, who do this thing. So it's difficult to emulate them, especially, you know, in STEM, as you stated. Also, lack of the tools and platforms for your career development and growth. And finally, prejudice, especially, you know, I would say boardroom banter and jokes, right, that might go wrong at the end of the day. Okay, so Julieta told us about white feminism. Chiamaka solidified with culture and political context, and you expanded it more with STEM. And 3 of you, in a way, right, spoke about the role of men in this process, and especially like how men have a lot of say in what happens in women empowerment. So I'd like to ask the question directly, basically, right? So first of all, to you guys, especially from what you have said, right, what role do you think men can play in advancing, you know, gender equality, gender rights, and gender access? And how can we encourage, you know, men to become allies to help support, you know, like women empowerment in this case? And I'm so interested because I'm a man, so I might just get this firsthand right now. I understand like what is happening. So Julieta, would you like to start us? So men, how can men do something about this problem?
Okay. Well, I believe in collective solutions from a bottom-up approach because, as Chioma said, men are in the decision-making roles, and many of them, sadly, do not want us to rebel, so to say, to empower ourselves, to talk, because we are taught to be quiet and to not to make any noise. So I think as men as the ones that are usually seen and heard and the ones in the position, in the decision-making roles, they can play a crucial role in advancing gender equality. And they sometimes do not realize that they have a lot to win too, because deconstructing gender roles also means that men could cry in public and they wouldn't be like criticized for being a pussy. Well, we see the sexism implicit in this insult, but by the way, but yeah, so I think the first way that they can, well, that they can help, and it's to educate themselves on gender equality and the impact it has on women, and also on their own lives. And this include reading books, attending workshops, or, well, above all, it's listening to actual women, to actual experiences, and trying to empathize, because empathy is something that usually is aligned with the femininity, well, the feminine sentiments and affects, but that's also a cultural construct that makes us this way. It's not biology, I mean. So yeah, to listen to actual women, and then second hand, well, yeah, secondly, speak out against sexism, because men usually don't tell the same jokes, for instance, when they are in a group of all men, as when they are here, for instance. So the context matters, but we should be able to keep our principles in whatever the context is. I mean, they can speak against sexism and misogyny to the, well, I think we all have seen some campaigns through social media saying, if you are friend of this, well, this misogynistic person, please, you're not really a feminist ally, because sometimes, well, that's the hypocrisy we live in. I mean, it's not only with feminism, but with everything. But yeah, I think it's important for them to call out sexist jokes and behaviors, and this would be a good way to challenge gender stereotypes and to promote a gender neutral language. I mean, and thirdly, um, share domestic responsibilities. Here, Hyoma had talked about how there's an uneven, well, the responsibilities are always for the women, and it's hard for them to concealize. So I think it's important that they take an active role in sharing domestic responsibilities, even if the enterprise doesn't give the paternity leave as well as the maternity leave, or even they can well, they can pick up their child. And this may challenge also the fact that in our daily life conversations, if a child gets hurt, we all ask where was his mother instead of his father. So I think this can start from the actions too, and not only the words. And then, yeah, overall, I think these three are the most important. And above all, to avoid speaking for women. Mansplaining, I mean, it's good that men speak out against sexism, but do not overstep, because the ones that should be telling their experiences and raising their voices are the ones that actually suffer the oppression. So that's like these 3 points, and that for the most important one, I think that summarizes pretty much what I had in mind.
Okay, bottom-up approach, right? Which basically means that collective solution making. You have to together find the solution. And men need to educate themselves, and most importantly, in this aspect, is learning empathy and learning to listen to women. Because they will tell you what it is that is the problem and what might be the path towards the solutions. You also spoke against, like, I feel like these jokes is very important because it has come up twice. So in that case, like, principles, as I said, need to be solid so that we do not become hypocrites, right? Depending on the context that we're in. As you stated, sharing domestic responsibilities as well is something men can engage in. And finally, you said mansplaining. So avoid trying to make explanations for women. And as you said formally, right, just ask them and listen to them, and maybe you understand better. Thank you so much, Julieta, for this point. I would like to hear Chiamaka's own view on probably like related to what she said, like how men can also be solution providers and can also help in women empowerment.
Thank you, Musa. Maybe to just be up camera a bit for this one. I'm trying
Okay.
to check for my bandwidth. So the thing, I think I'll just speak to one because I think Julieta has really taken a deep delve into this. And for me, the one would be, I started the conversation with talking about meaning. And that meaning it's really a function of listening. This is an active listening, right? And the reason why I say that is because sometimes women are hard to ask for help. Do you know what I mean? Women are hard to ask for help because our socialization has been such that we carry this thing for donkey years. It's been passed on from our mothers. Do you know what I mean? And so it's difficult sometimes for us to ask for help, even when we need that help, right? So the leading in terms of even thought, for example, there's a role open in the organization, and you're quick to, pick on the guy who is louder, but the woman is more competent. But the guy, because he's speaking he has all the finesse, right? So again, it's intentionality to draw that out of that person, right? In that leadership way, to guide and say, you could actually do this, that, right? So that's one way, putting it, in the corporate space, right? So it starts from that thought, that consciousness, that mindfulness, to exist. So for me, I'll put as a gender awareness. Right. Don't be blind. Don't be gender blind. Be more intentional. To observing, one of the sorts of things that are playing out in the teams, in your organization, and all of that, sort of like to give that head start. Right. So that's how I'll talk about it, in the professional setting. And I would imagine that the professional setting will also apply, like in business, in the economy, and in politics. On the home front as well, it will be a different dimension to that listening, but still listening, right? Again, women are hard to ask for help, even at home, domestically, right? And so it's really saying, do you want to outsource cooking, for example? Is that something that you want to do? Is that something that you're considering doing this year or this month? Do you think it will relieve you a bit? I know that you're going all out for this promotion, and I'm trying as much to connect with my earlier points that I made around women not showing up. It could be your sister. She might have indicated interest, around this new job role, that is available in our establishment. What are the barriers? Just helping her to think what those barriers even might be for her, and supporting, it could even be as much as, as I'm paying for the first one, you can go on to pay for the rest, right? But this is me for my support for you, right? So we have to walk the talk. It can't just be around conversations, right? But it has to be backed, right? We have to be saying, you know what, I'm interested in your growth, I'm interested in your livelihood, in you even surviving. Right, we see all of these sorts of conversations even around us when women have children, right? And then the men are on and on about, oh, you did not attend to my brother-in-law. Again, I'm going back to the cultural aspects of it. You did not do my brother-in-law, my brother food because she just had it. Of course, she just had a baby, right? So she can't really be her full self. Again, leaning in and just being considerate, that empathy, should come through. Right, beyond just talking it to actually doing it, right? So that's the next level for me of allyship, right? It's men partnering in that way, to be able to, and I say this to every level of consciousness for the culture that we live in. It might not apply the same way overall, but there's the point of the woman. Whether your sisters, your mothers, feeling protected, because we still have a male-dominated and patriarchal society where we come from. So sometimes the women are leaning on and hoping that the men will protect them from cultural implications, right? And when that does not happen, it leaves her there, out there. She probably doesn't have a strong voice with her in-laws to be able to say, oh, don't come, because if you come, I'm going to be cooking every day for you guys, but you can say that, right? Pending till where we get to the point that everybody's voice is harmonized. Give a head start. The man can give a head start towards protecting that woman from certain cultural stuff, for want of a better word. So that's like a two small examples there in terms of the actual, right? And if I'll wrap up with saying, again, it's the empathy, leaning in with thoughts and consideration. That's definitely the first place to start. To sort of draw out what tangible help, and barriers are for her. And then secondly, walking the talk, putting your money where your mouth is. If it's something that can be outsourced, that can certainly be paid for, nothing stops that man from, putting their first money down to say, I'm feeding this for you. All right now, thank you.
All right. I love how practical like what you have given is. Basically, first of all, we start from professionally, right? In how active listening is key, right? So just listen, like, don't assume, especially because, as you said, it might be some difficult for some women because of the cultural circumstances and just the expectations and the roles that they have, right? For them to come to you to ask for help because it might mean, to them that they are not performing what is expected of them, etc. Right? So the active listening is kind of like, from my understanding, from what you said, to decipher how you can also be of help to that person or to that woman, right? And also spoke about the intentionality of it, especially, I guess, in this case, in terms of a family now, right? Outsourcing what needs to be outsourced, asking, if she can do this, she can do that, what you should do, etc. And finally, empathy, right? Because it will help you to become like very considerate and to allow you to be able to, as you said, put your money where the talk is, which is very important as well. Also to allow for a head start, as you mentioned, so that the man, right, we're able to allow the woman to just be in a position whereby she doesn't have to by herself ask for these things, but you intuitively know what things are required to be as that head start. So thank you so much, Chiamaka. Chioma, I know you've gotten so many of good points and salient points, but I'll give you time as well to contribute. What you think, perhaps like in STEM, right? Or in another area that you're looking at, how men probably can like add or be contributors to decision making to access for women's empowerment. Chioma, are you with us?
Okay, hi.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that Julieta and Chiamaka already made like very, very strong points, especially like I can really connect to what Julieta said about do not speak for the women, let the women speak. And definitely like how Chiamaka has tied it to, at the end of the day, the man has to like lend his voice, especially in some situations where there are certain things that a woman cannot say, especially, in the African context. Something that I would just like to add is, I would like to add that in my own opinion, and I mean, this may be strongly unpopular, I do not really believe that the men have like an active role in the way that they start to view women. I think that this is something that actively women have to take action in ensuring that, we have a society where we feel that we have equal rights and, we have like access to the same kinds of opportunities. And I think that one of the best ways to do this is to take it from like the smallest unit, which is like the family. The family is usually like the smallest units in society. So I think that if we intrinsically as women start to sensitize the men in our lives about what I call like mapping, creating a map about how we want things to function, how things suit us. And we start to enlighten the men in our lives about the fact that things do not have to be the same for everybody. And this is really done in a very this should be done in like a really empathetic way, because especially when you're talking to like men who have grown up in with certain values, and things have already been set for them, it's important to highlight to them that it's really very key for us to map things around how we as individuals, how these things suit us as individuals. Because if you take, for example, what Chiamaka was saying about the fact that, in a family where you have a woman who is also contributing financially, right? That is something that is not very typical. So at the end of the day, you explaining to this man that this is the reason why I have to take on this role. Either whether it's regards to like your passion, whether it's regards to the fact that you want the entire family to have like a better standard of living, but that place where you explain and let him understand that even though everybody does this, it does not really fit into our lives. And, just bearing it like that and mapping, like I said, is like really very key. And you find that the moment you can sensitize your man, he starts to become sensitive about certain things when he goes outside. Because, these values are already coming from the family. So you see that the man gets to the workplace and becomes like a more sensitive person. If you have raised like a boy child to be sensitive to, ask your sister's opinion when decisions are being taken, ask your sister's opinion, or you actively even always letting the girls also contribute to topics that are generally just seen as, oh, it's men who take this decision. You find that the boy grows to naturally just ask other people's opinions and, naturally allows other people to be on this table. So I think that if you are experiencing a problem, nobody can really understand that problem as much as you. And you have to take active steps in solving that problem. And one of the active things about solving a problem is that you have to let people understand that this is a problem, this is why it's a problem, and this is the solution that you're preferring. They can now bring like recommendations or suggestions, and we can now look at everything and say, yes, this is what we have developed. So in my opinion, instead of asking guys what they can contribute, I think that we should take it to being the ones who enlighten the guys about how they can contribute actively to make our lives better, to make things easier for us, and to ensure that we can work in a more balanced, equitable environment. So I think that that's something that we should also look into, in addition to everything that Julieta and Chiamaka have said. Thank you.
Oh, wow. I feel so blessed moderating this. Because I'm actively listening to everything that you guys are saying, and I love your unpopular opinion. Basically how like sensitization is key. According to what you said, right? Basically that, to a large extent, women have to control, allow me to use that word, right? The information they circulate regarding the men in their lives, and basically the kinds of images of expectations that they create. Because as you said, men do not have like an active like role of viewing women in a particular way, but women should take that active step of putting the image that they want the man to have, right, about women to those particular men, which will, in essence, right, kind of map out as you use the mapping, and also help in guiding that man's life, if it's a boy child, that boy child's life, in the long run, to be able to also view other aspects of their life, not just family now, but maybe society, culture, to view it in such a way that it will be more conscious of women there, and will be able to like ask more questions. Whoa, so thank you, Chiamaka, Julieta, and Chioma for these two questions. For the questions, we'll just take a break now, and we will move to the next thing, which is on Chioma's project, right? So Chioma is one of our fellows, one of our 10 fellows. And as I've already explained from the Cafe Scientific Woman brief, she's just ensuring that, some of the things that we spoke about is being addressed fundamentally. So I would like Chioma, if you are ready now for your presentation, you have about 10 minutes to help us understand from your own perspective, from what you guys have done, right, what Cafe Scientific Woman is all about.
Hi, okay, so yes, basically, based upon the issues that we already talked about the problems that we identified that women generally have in having a very successful STEM career, we looked at the questions about representation, about seeing a model, about work-life balance, about prejudice. And we looked at these questions and we came to the conclusion that for lack of work-life balance, one of the problems, one of the things that could be causing that is when you do not know women who have been able to like balance this. And again, like I said, you know, there are some fields where they're more dominated by women as opposed to some other fields. So take, for example, if you come from a family where you do not really have the means to be able to get like a help, a chef, somebody to help with certain activities, what you want to do is that, yes, you have like a passion in a STEM career. So what you want to do is to identify the STEM career that could give you time for you to manage your time flexibly. So you would put in the hours, but they would be very flexible and they would be under your control. So you want to do that. So, you know, being able to see women who have been able to manage and control the time to achieve their goals is something that is so key. So we started the Cafe Scientific Woman Initiative, and we started it with three main goals in mind: to create a platform where women can share their stories and talk about trending STEM topics, inspiring other women to be able to take actions. Secondly, is for this platform to enable women to, you know, connect and network outside of even the cafe, to be able to ask questions, to be able to access mentors during and after the cafes. And the last is, you know, like core mentorship, where a woman who has gone ahead of you can, you know, basically lead you by the hands until you're able to get to that place where you can now even start to lead other people. So at the end of the day, Cafe Scientific Woman is bridging the gap that exists. And we're doing this by creating a platform where women can network, can be mentored, and can also discuss on trending STEM topics. In the past year that we have been around, we have been able to coach about 1,000 young girls who belong to our network, investing about 350 hours. And typically we do this by having like a physical cafe. And what happens in the cafe is you have a speaker who talks about a trending STEM topic. And after talking about the topic, they also talk about like their career and how they were able to succeed in their career. So share even insights to, scholarship opportunities, fellowship opportunities for the other young girls to leverage. Then the other way that we do this is we do it through science debates, because at the end of the day, in the center of science or scientific skills is your ability to research, the ability to be curious, to ask questions, and to actively seek answers to these questions. So through science debates, we're encouraging the girls to think intrinsically about certain science topics and certain science issues, to research about those issues, and to be able to dialogue in, you know, in any environment and convince people about the right course of action that they think should be taken to solve these problems. And this research skill, it transfers into even how they write their projects, how they generally write articles. And then the third way that we're doing this is also through the physical field visits, where we expose the girls to concepts that they have learned either at the cafe or in their classrooms, or they have read about somewhere. Take, for example, what we're doing with like greenhouse farming. A lot of the girls who have been part of our greenhouse cafes have never they had heard about the greenhouse farming techniques, but they had never actually interacted with greenhouse farms. So getting to the greenhouse farms, discussing with like the professors and understanding how, they were able to plant using rice husk, transferring waste to wealth, using sawdust, planting with like hydroponics and aeroponics has been something that has really been a game changer for them. So what basically we are doing, and in partnership with Ayoka Fellowship, and of course, like I have to say like a really big thank you to Ayoka Fellowship, because I mean, like in terms of pushing, in terms of some of the funds that we have gotten, helping with tips about the right people to access, even some of the courses that our young girls have been able to access, these are things that have come from like Ayoka Fellowship, and our virtual events, even our virtual science debates, have been, it's been the Ayoka platform. So we have been partnering with Ayoka Fellowship, so to speak, and other organizations, key organizations here in the Southeast, like different universities, different ministries, the professors, like the academics, the professionals who are in like quality control, research and development in, certain organizations. We have been partnering with them to be able to achieve this. And basically, our cafes always stem around topics like climate change, healthcare, vaccine technologies, and pandemic preparedness, food security. What we're trying to help these girls understand and inspire them to do is to identify key problems that they can apply scientific knowledge and skills to solve these problems. And so far, we've been able to reach 1,000 girls, and we're hoping to have like a virtual summit this year, gathering all of this, gathering young girls and going outside of Southeast, reaching girls all over Nigeria and the entire Africa, getting them to a summit and getting them to be exposed to like these trending topics through panel sessions, getting them to have like breakout sessions where they talk to like a mentor and can actually map out like their career path with these mentors. And then, as for the other things, we're just looking to expand and especially reach young women in the northern region of Nigeria, because like we can all agree that there really is a dearth in terms of education generally in the north. And it even is, women are even worse impacted from the northern Nigeria. So this is what we're intending to do to improve that number. This year, we're intending to reach 5 times the number we reached last year, which is 5,000 women. And we're hoping to be able to get more mentors to mentor these girls, and definitely shoot up the number of hours. By 3 times, we're expecting to do 1,050 hours this year. And then we're expecting to help these young girls, about 50 of these young girls have like their first publications from like the university stage. And of course, this year, we are now reaching girls in primary and secondary school and just helping to inspire curiosity in them. We're hoping to inspire their abilities to ask questions and be very interested in how does this work? How does this function? So far, so good. This is what we have done, and as well as what we expect to do.
Okay, thank you, Choma. Good on time as well. For very detailed explanation of what you guys have been doing. Just as a brief recap, right? You said basically that being able to help girls see mentors and to see women that have achieved their goals was kind of like the main objective, right? And as a result, they're kind of like
in addition to that being the main objective, the big picture is to equip these young girls with the scientific skills to solve indigenous problems. We want to build like a society of young women who do not want problems here to be solved by people outside of here. We want to empower these young women to solve these problems here. And of course, I mean, we envision a future where we would be exporting solutions also instead of always importing solutions. So yeah.
Okay, thank you for that addition. So on the one hand, right, visualization and representation, on the other hand, indigenous solutions, right? I explained that there are kind of like three angles to this. First of all, right, is sharing the stories to these women to achieve their goals. Then there's the networking aspect, and then there's the core mentorship, right? And you spoke about how you're able to reach 1,000 girls. That's about 350 hours. And during the cafe sessions, you share topics, careers, and opportunities. During the science debates, you guys talk about research issues, you dialogue, and you gave the example of the greenhouse farms, for example. And in partnerships, right, you partner in the Southeast, I understand, with universities, ministries, and organizations. And basically, for your plan of expansion, you're trying to do 5 times the amount of women, 3 times the work hours. You want to get more women mentors, and you want to expand into the north to kind of help in, bringing that goal, basically the representation, as well as, on the other hand, the indigenous solutions. So thank you so much for this presentation. And so this is the session or the period whereby I will allow the three of you, so Chiamaka, Julieta, so I'll vanish now soon, and I'll allow the three of you to just have a conversation basically on this project. So basically what we want to achieve here is, Julieta and Chiamaka, you to be able to kind of first of all ask more questions concerning Chiama's project, and not only questions, right, but also like offer advice from maybe some of the things that she has stated as well. I don't know. I'll start with maybe this time Chiamaka. Like, first of all, like what you think about the project, and then we'll go to Julieta. From there, I won't talk for the next 15 to 20 minutes, and I'll allow you guys to just be going back and forth. So Chiamaka, over to you.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Musa. Thank you. Yes, thank you, John, as well. I do love the parts of exporting solutions. I like the parts of exporting solutions. And great job, Chioma. Your numbers are really audacious, and that's good. They're just commending all of your efforts, especially for women in STEM, and all. So I was having a read earlier today, just about all of the stuff, the different levels to relate, the ages and everything. So it's good that it cuts across, different levels of women and girls. The one question I wanted to ask is what your thoughts are, or how you're plugging into the ecosystem. By that I mean, what partnerships do you currently have? What partnerships are you looking to gain in terms of just stretching out? What the other advice? So 3 things that I want to say. So that's the first one from me. So that's the key question. So the second one for me is just in terms of, I know it's SDG 5, but it sounds to me like this is 5.4. Like I'm not drilling down to the targets. Maybe 5.4, 5.5, I'm not sure. The one that specifically talked about technology. And I'm saying this essentially because I want you to think about it more from a system level. System level entrepreneurship, I think, will help you to expand your vision more. And plug into more things. By more things, I'm not saying like, dissipate yourself and dissipate your energy, but in terms of how you're thinking about the big vision of the big why for you with the cafe, right? I think that a system play is what you should be looking at. So it might be just an initial comment, from the little I know about it. It's possible that you already are doing that. In terms of thinking about, and by system level, I mean yes, I know that S5 is what you're contributing to, right? But in the circles that you're playing, in the space, for example, is this in Nigeria, in Africa, you know, in the space, what aspect is it plugging? What levers are you pulling? Who are you latching on to? How are you partnering to solve the bigger problem? Right. I don't know if that communication is clear in that regard, but I wanted to hear a bit more around what your partnerships are like. And you know, just the nexus of other people that you sort of have, the ecosystem that you sort of support, and that supports you too, as well. And forgive me if I missed that, that you mentioned it in your earlier conversation.
Okay, thank you, Chamaka. So initially, during the discussion, I had thrown a little bit of light as to the why. And I mean, if we go back to like, why did this really happen? I think that the reason why I even started to think about how do I create a platform for women is because when I was in school myself, I had no form of support and there was no platform. It was basically like, you know, just flying blind. And I think that this is the same kind of problem that some of the people within my network who are women in the STEM field also experience. Even things down to as little as you have finished a seminar, nobody is telling you that one of the things that you should quickly do is to publish that, as they could, you know, it could affect, just having a publication could affect like when you're applying for a scholarship and wanting to like skill up. And because of all of these gaps, I started to think about like, what can we do? What can be done? Because of these gaps that exist, you know, you meet like a lot of amazing women who are intelligent, who are killing it in different sectors, but nothing that is being done collectively for them to, for us to be able to solve problems. So you have like really intelligent women, but nobody's really applying this to solve problems in the society. And so with Ayoka came like the opportunity for me to just get this done. And this is the reason why my research was like really very detailed and was exploring, because I didn't want to only come from, oh, this happened to me. So I think that this is an everybody's problem. This is something that every woman is experiencing. I wanted to, you know, look for like the hard facts and find out, is there really a problem? Is this really a problem, or is it peculiar to only me and the few people that I know? And with the research, I found that, yes, this really is a problem. And, you know, the other major problem is the fact that we're churning out like all these amazing people, but, you know, nobody to guide them. And you see people who have like really long-term careers, and, you know, you find out that this person is in business development, just like the way I was in business development, but this person had like a really strong STEM background in school, had like a great result, did like a great research for their project, but this just ended up after school, you know, after getting the dissertation A and getting like a second class or first class. That was it. It didn't translate into anything. So this is the big why. And like I already mentioned earlier, women are like the nurturers. So regardless, you find that the women are the ones who nurture, you know, 70% of the time or even more. And if they nurture people, and knowing that like science skills or STEM skills help problem solving of people in general. And if these women are the ones who nurture, then imagine when a woman has grown up intrinsically being like a problem solver because they have had like a STEM career, you find that they can raise children who can really look at problems, ask questions, and start to answer those questions, and even, you know, translate into what products can I now produce to make people's lives better after finding out that this is the solution to these problems. So this is the big why for Cafe Scientific Woman. And this is why we started Cafe Scientific Woman, because it behoves us to start to challenge women and start to really inspire women and open their eyes to their abilities to be able to really change our society and change it through like scientific processes, through research and development. And then as for the ecosystems that I plug into, Right now, we're partners with Ebonyi State University. We're partners with Federal University Ndufu Alike Iko, which is Funai. We're partnering with like the Ministry of Education here in Ebonyi State. We have also like been able to leverage like our opportunities at Ayoka to be able to do certain projects. And we have been able to partner with individuals. We have quite like a lot of individuals who mentor in this network, contributing like their time, their expertise to raising young girls. So we're really just partnering with people who are, you know, who buy into the vision of the amazing things that can be done through these young women. But then definitely I can say that in terms of like the ecosystems that we're plugging in, we're definitely not even at like half potentials. We have like the potentials to really do a lot more with in terms of partnerships, you know. So with the ministry, we're reaching out to like secondary and primary schools, and with the universities, we're reaching out to girls in the universities. But then in terms of like partnering with organizations that exist, for example, like your organization, we haven't really done a lot of work in that aspect. And of course, like we're very young. This is, our project is barely a year. And so this year we're really looking into like those partnerships. Certain grants have been applied for, but these things take time. So I think that by the end of this year, you know, we would have plugged into a lot of other ecosystems. Last year, I applied for the Falling Walls Engage pitches. And even though I didn't make it as the winner, but I made it to like the finalist. And because of that, we belong to like a network called the Bosch Alumni Network. And this network, like, you know, I'm talking to like certain women to be able to mentor. And, you know, I'm really looking into leveraging this network also for the summit. And certain grants are also available. But of course, because I joined this network sometime last year, late last year, you know, it's important and imperative to understand the system and how it works and how to go about things. So these are some of the things that we're looking at this year. And of course, my focal person, Vivian, who's not here today, had already talked about the fact that this forum was also like a platform for us to be able to, you know, gain more partnerships. So I think that this year would be able to plug into a lot more ecosystems, but I would appreciate also if there is like a framework that you already have or a manual of how I can plug into more partnerships, just so that we're able to like hit our targets this year.
So let me ask you a more direct question.
Okay.
And I think after this, I'll leave space for Julieta. My question is, do you have a theory of change? Right. And again, going back to the system level approach that I'm talking about, do you have a theory of change that is guiding the work, that is framing the work that you're doing?
Right. Do I have a theory? This thing is lagging. It's just me.
Yes, a theory of change. And I'll put it in the chat, a theory of change.
Okay.
Do you have that? Or is that something? And I mean, if you don't have that, that's okay. It's good that you're in your early days, so you can start to build that now. But I think it will guide, it will sort of guide and, you know, narrow, help you to be more sort of like focused and niche in the problem that you're solving. And you'll be able to plug in better into other spaces. But I'll let you answer that question. Do you have that, or is that a conversation that you're willing to?
As of now, no, I do not. Maybe I don't understand the question. Maybe I do have a theory of change, but have not labeled it as theory of change. But as for how I understand theory of change, no, I don't think that I don't have a theory of change.
Okay, that's fine. It's like saying you have a log frame, you know, for your project, for your organization, you know, this is how you want to build up the solution that you're contributing to. So again, going back to the question I'm asking around how are you taking this from a system level? But we can take up that conversation out of here so that, you know, we can give it a bit of time, to the other. Unless Musa, are you saying that this is not a lecture time? So I imagine that maybe that will be a separate conversation. But just to be more respectful of others' time. But all right, so we can take up that conversation. And maybe Leota has one or two things to say to this.
Okay.
Okay, so, well, Kioma, I have to say that I absolutely love the initiative of Cafe Scientific. So first of all, congratulations, honestly. Because breaking the gender gap means talking and having non-academic conversations and building bridges from a bottom-up approach, like we said. And sometimes academia can be a bubble, and it's only available for a minority. So yeah, I believe that building bridges between women, it's so important in a society that teaches women to compete and to be jealous and to feel, well, threatened by the existence of other women. There is no more revolutionary act than to build support networks and to help one another. So I completely agree with the fact that efforts should be made to challenge gender stereotypes and encourage girls and women to pursue careers also in traditionally male-dominated fields like STEM, in order to break this gap to reach, well, equality. Because in Spain, at least, that's a reality too. I mean, as soon as I open a company file, I can see that for the engineer column, there are only male names, whilst the administrative and cleaning sections is, of course, female dominated. So yeah, it's a shame, actually. So here, well, I wanted to ask you two questions. The first one is about the stereotypes through the media, because I don't know, in Nigeria, I didn't know if either the inequalities between the south and the north of the country. So thank you for bringing that up, because I had no idea. So I don't know in Nigeria, but here in Spain, most of the science toys, when you watch television and as Christmas approach more and more, so most of the science toys have a boy in the cover or in the advertisement, and most of the kitchen baby toys, puppies, cute pink things are for the girl. So from the very early years, we are taught to behave a certain way. So I don't know, maybe you thought about a campaign in order to end this worldwide. That would be great. Or in order to enlighten the youngest ones, or to raise awareness. I don't know. And then, well, that's my first question regarding this mediatic system that we do not like very much. So my second question is, if you see many women who, after successfully completing their STEM degree, engineering or mathematician or whatever, they are not hired as much as men in high positions mainly.
Okay, yes. So first of all, thank you for your encouraging words. I truly appreciate. With regards to having like media campaigns to be able to tackle this issue from the advocacy point of view, yes, that's a discussion that it's already been had with again my focal person Vivian, and this year we're planning to, in the third quarter, to roll out campaigns so that we are tackling this, because at the end of the day, if you do read like our documents talking about like the problems and how we can tackle these problems, apart from like the physical cafes and actively working with these young girls, something that we want to do is to influence policies, policies that are very friendly for women, policies that also encourage like funding for women, policies that encourage women being able to enter into these spaces. So yes, and we do realize that, I mean, in the 21st century, in this social media age, campaign does a lot in being able to reach people that you can't even reach physically. So yes, definitely a big part of our plan. And the second question, what was the second question again?
Sorry, yeah. If you see many women who do not drop out of university of secondary school, but
Yeah.
after successfully completing, they are not hired in higher
Yes.
positions. Yeah.
Definitely. Yes, definitely. And even like on a personal level, for example, I would just tell like this funny story. So one of my friends works as an on-site engineer for an oil and gas company. And then, you know, when she started working in her the second month when she started working, she used the restroom, um, you know, and while she was using the restroom, her sanitary pad fell into the toilet because the adhesive wasn't strong enough, right? And so she's like, oh my God, okay, let me flush this. And I'm flushing that. I mean, the pipes got clogged. And so somebody had to come unclog it. And of course, as the only woman on the ship, it's obvious she's the one who used the pad. And of course, now it's obvious that she's the one who's on a period. And so you see that, and you know, she was like, she didn't know how to react to this. She didn't know whether to own up to it or to just act like nothing happened. And then everybody just keeps quiet about it. But at the end of the day, you know, she decided to like just make a joke out of it and be like, okay, yeah, biology class for everybody. This is what happens when you're a woman. And everybody laughed about it. And I can imagine that that is like an experience that is very different for like a lot of men. And even probably their dispositions towards like a woman on her period may start to change or like, you know, take a turn for the better. But yes, you do see situations where women are not employed, and for things as simple as this, you know, men's toilets, everybody's toilets has been clogged. The next round of, recruitment, they're like, oh yeah, we don't want a woman on this team because we don't want something like this to happen, especially if that woman didn't make light of the situation or, you know, was very sensitive about it. So at the end of the day, yes, there are definitely like industries and there are fields where women have graduated and have like very good results. But even the fear is the reason why sometimes women are not recruited. For example, you know, if a man is on the rig and gets like, you know, like an injury, a cut that they wouldn't see as anything, and they wouldn't even think twice about it after putting first aid. For a woman, it could be something else. You know, it could be she gets home and she gets berated about it. It could be like a husband complaining, like, I don't like this about you, and certain things like that. So these factors, which is like nobody's fault, really affects recruitment processes. And sometimes if you think about like the rigors of these jobs, you can understand why men do not want to employ women. For example, I am not like the most productive person. You know, generally women are not like the most productive people on the days that they're experiencing their periods, or you know, during the times that they're experiencing pains and all of that. So you do find that they're just organizations. Probably it's not even like something that is in their standard of operation. It's not written down, but generally in an interview, a guy who doesn't have as good a result as you may get hired simply because they're guys and they're just certain things that their body or their mindset can withstand more than a woman's mindset can withstand. So yes, this is something that is happening. And of course, like, you know, in our campaigns, like I already explained, something that we need to start understanding is that there has to be like a place for mapping, not just from like the family units, but even for like organizations, mapping how best to work with women, and women being at the center of like these conversations and these decisions about how they can work best, when they can work best, and how they can contribute, you know, better in the workforces to enable that opportunity for them to be able to be in this key industries.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and that's also the fact that we do not only menstruate, but we may get pregnant. So
exactly.
it's 9 months of maternity leave.
Yeah.
I mean, well, here in Spain, something that, well, it's really recent. But now we can ask for a leave. Menstrual pain is considered a reason to take a few days off. So that's a progress. I mean, because we are over medicated already. So well, you you understand. I think all of us did after how well you explain it. So thank you for that too.
Okay, can I come back? Thank you so much for the awesome back and forth between Chiamaka and Julieta as well. And thank you, Shoma, for basically explaining your project and responding. I am very sure that three of you have an after discussion to talk about more things, right? That might help in probably Choma's project, etc. I would like now to open the floor maybe to the public for questions, right? So this can be questions to Choma, to Chiamaka, to Julieta, or generally questions, right? So if you have any question, you can unmute your mic or you can send to the group chat. If there are no questions, I have my own questions. Right. So I'll just wait for some seconds. If anyone has a question, you can just unmute and ask that question. Okay, Ali, you can go ahead.
So hi everyone, thanks a lot for the discussion. I just wanted to ask Chioma, because I think the question about partnerships was really interesting. And I know that your perspective also has always been giving the floor for women participating in these debates to bring up solutions to society. And that's why I believe the question was really important, because if you want to contribute and be an actor, relevant actor of civil society, you need to be like working on networking and so on. So my question was, what are your obstacles? Because I feel like the mere fact that you exist and that it's a women organization proposing solutions may be already challenging in the ecosystem, like in the STEM ecosystem, but also in the public governance domain. So what are your obstacles when you're an actor, like a women-led organization that's bringing on solutions to the table and wants politicians to hear about it? What do you think are your obstacles?
I would just say that I think that our major obstacle is really just having like a lot of hands on deck to be able to do this. In terms of like seeking out partnerships, I would say that we have received very open arms and welcoming arms, and surprisingly, a lot of people are impressed, both men and women, with our initiative. And I would say that in the few months that we have, we have existed, in the months that we have been doing this Cafe Scientific Woman, we have sought partnership with people that we had worked with in the past. And because of that, definitely because they already know who we are, like our personality, our abilities to deliver, people have generally been open to us. But I am imagining that this year, talking to or writing to or seeking out partnership with organizations who do not really know about us or who someone is not recommending us to, we may experience challenges. So as at this point, I cannot really speak to challenges in terms of like seeking out partnerships, because the organizations that we have sought partnership with, they have been very welcoming. So maybe when we start to experience those challenges, I would email you, Alexia.
Yeah, thanks. It's maybe interesting if you do like a map of actors to think about the challenges before going, like to understand what might be the vision of others of you, like how you're perceived. It was just that was my question. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So you were not only referring to like partnerships, you were also referring to like even the young women and, you know, the people that we come in touch with or we're trying to inspire. Is that what you're saying, Alexa? Am I right?
Yeah, well, when I mean actors, I mean everyone involved.
Everyone
Like,
involved. Oh,
I feel the partnerships are also part of it. And
yeah.
like the people you want to be
Yeah.
heard by, you know, like the solutions you're bringing are meant to be implemented also by some decision makers. So I meant partnerships and actors. But I feel like when you start building a strategy for, as you said, partnerships or just advancing on the actors in the field, this would be a thing to think about.
Yeah, definitely. And even with like our major stakeholders who are the young girls, you know, because this is like very novel, this is very new. Like in our first cafe, everybody who attended the first cafe, this was like the first time that they were attending a science focused kind of events, even like throughout their university time. You know, they had never attended something like this, they had never attended like even a cafe or like a discussion fora. So, and because of that, they were like very open to it. It was something that they just grabbed with like enthusiasm, because this is something that they had noticed was lacking, and you know, nobody was filling that gap. So in terms of the fact that this is quite novel, and I think that something that also sets our organization apart is that a lot of organizations who do anything STEM related are really just focused on like the IT skills, you know, coding, programming, AI, but we're actually really focusing also, you know, in addition to that, we're really very focused on like science itself, you know, the process, like the natural sciences, the earth sciences, you know, research writing skills, R&D development, interacting with concepts that you're learning in the classroom, and, you know, just creating an opportunity for girls to start to fall in love with science because it's something that they really understand and grasp. And so because of that, I guess that because this is kind of new and novel, maybe that's the reason why we haven't really experienced challenges. You know, everybody has been very welcoming, but like I said, probably in expansion, maybe reaching out like to the northern parts, because, you know, sometimes the name may be a little bit new, the concept is a bit new, maybe we'll start to experience those challenges. And, you know, and now that you have asked the question, it's good for us to also like have a strategy for possible challenges that we may experience doing this and how to be able to work around those challenges. So thank you so much, Alexia.
All right. Thank you, Alexia, for that question. Does anyone else have a question? You can just unmute your mic or raise your hand and ask away. Okay, I have my own question, right? We have about like 10 minutes to go. And maybe this can be the last thing we do before we wrap up. And I would like to ask, right, especially because we have been talking about, especially the last dialogue between Choma and Julieta, and also to a large portion what Chamaka has said, right? A lot of the times when we do effect change in society, in institutions and systems, right? You are distorting a lot of things, right? There will be a degree of entropy for a period of time, and that can cause a lot of, you know, well, I say internal conflict within the system or the institution, etc. So I'd like to ask, especially as related to policy or as related, which is, you know, connected to what Choma is doing, right? Basically, by saying you want to help women get into STEM, what you're trying to do is to also kind of change the balance of things within the system in itself, right? So for me, the question is, okay, so for people that might argue that, let's imagine, take into account, you know, the factors affecting women, as you guys have stated, right? Menstrual pain, pregnancies, amongst other things, right? Which affects productivity and can, you know, like puncture that woman's career, right? Because if you're pregnant, you just have to go out. You don't have an option, basically, right? So I'd like to say, like, how should policies view, I'll just use the word compensation, or how should policies be structured in such a way that it balances everything? So for a man, right, that
has no leave whatsoever, right? How should he be compensated? Or for a woman, like let's imagine a world whereby all countries allow women to have, let's say, 4 days or a week because of monthly, right? Because of menstrual pains. Like, how should it be compensated? Should it be balanced so that the men don't feel overloaded of that? Basically, around policy making, the compensation and the balance for every change that you want to effect. So I would like to hear 3 of your thoughts. Maybe Julieta can start, then we'll go to Chioma, and then we'll conclude with Chiamaka.
Okay. Despite the fact that I think that it's a bit naive to think that big corporations will do more than their classic pink washing, because I think that's all they do sometimes. It's to, yeah, we are hiring a woman for this position. So they include, because they have to. I mean, it's illegal not to have certain percentage of women. But nonetheless, I think promoting gender equality is a duty for government, business, and civil society altogether. And for instance, women and businesses can promote policies that support work-life balance. That is, parental leave, flexible working arrangements, or most importantly, affordable childcare. Because a parental leave, what it usually does, it's presented from the company or from the corporation as a conciliatory measure and as a gender equality measure, but the parental leave is usually taken by the women. So there is no equality there. The man is not leaving because they have recently had a child, usually. And nowadays, there is also the leave for men. But if men and women left their post, their jobs, and at home, the caretaking duties are always done by the female part of the family, I don't think that's promoting any equality, but just giving the man a holiday. Because all goes back to education and to the basis and to promote actual changes in the mentalities and to enlighten our partners and our friends and our sons or whatever. I mean, it goes back to a change of mentality too. So I think what some companies can do is actually educate their workers and their employees in gender equality, because these companies usually gave formative pills or they are short courses in, I don't know, food handling, for instance. And some of them actually sometimes they hire a gender expert or a technician in order to give some ideas, some fresh ideas for them to understand why it is important that they cooperate in the family, why it is important that we all as a society advance in women's rights. And so I do believe that business, for instance, can not only arrange flexible working arrangements, but also promote affordable childcare for childs to stay there, and a parental leave that is actually even and that does not prejudice the women more. I mean, yeah. And then governments, they kind of are already doing something. For instance, this leave that we talked about for menstrual pain, but then there is no policy that actually regulates that companies are following the rules, are playing by the handbook. Because in fact, most of the plans are bad organized. I usually work with these equality plans, and and it's really discouraging. I mean, so I think there should be a mechanism from the gender. Here it's called the Ministerio de Igualdad, which is translated by the Equality Minister or something. And they can do more, but of course, this costs money. So they should invest in equality measures, in education for everyone. Even in schools, we should be educated in gender equality and, well, in a lot of more things that they do not educate us. So yeah, I think that government expenditure is key. And yeah, well, I know I throw many ideas a bit not very ordered, but yeah, I don't know. What's your take on that, Chioma and Chiamaka?
Chioma, you can go ahead.
Okay. Definitely, I see where Yoleta is coming from, and I agree with some, all of her points really, in terms of the fact that if you look at that a woman is taking like leave, menstrual leave, say for example, because she's feeling pains, and generally because she's not going to be productive, and sometimes this even, the mood swing, the bad mood, the pain, it transfers into like other colleagues, and creates a distraction even in the workplace. So if you look at it that this one is in pains, and honestly, I don't know if you guys saw these videos of certain men experiencing a stimulation of what it feels like to be on your period, and how a lot of men couldn't even take it. Meanwhile, this was something that women were taking with like a smile on their face. If you do understand the amount of pain that women have to go through, then you would only be too happy to help out, right? But then again, I am like an advocate for asking everybody affected to share their experience and also prefer a solution as to how they think that this is what works best for them. So I feel like to have like a policy that is inclusive for all, both men and women, then men and women should have these conversations. It's like, if I go to work as a woman, this is the reason why I cannot function, and this is the reason why I need leave. So men now have to come on the table and present the reason why they should get their leave. And, with their presentations, because sometimes what happens is that sometimes when you're experiencing pain, you're unable to see the pains of others, right? So as women, obviously we experience like different kinds of pains and different kinds of life-altering situations. Like if you're pregnant, this is something that alters your life for your life. So bringing that conversation to the table and explaining to like the other party that this is what I am experiencing. And also listening to that party explain some challenges and some decisions and some experiences that they are having is very key to having like a robust policy that impacts everybody positively. So, in the course of this conversation, men may realize that what we were thinking was an issue is not an issue. And everybody can generally have like a better disposition, or women can even realize that I never thought about the fact that this could be an issue for men. So it's for me, these policies are things that have to be done like through dialogue, just to ensure that there is equity for everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, Julieta and Chioma. I know Chioma has to leave by 8 p.m. Or that's 7 her time, right? So yeah. I don't think she can respond, but then I just really want to thank all of you, first of all, for coming. I want to thank Julieta and Chiamaka for just being here, for sharing, like your experience, for sharing your knowledge with us. And to Chioma, like 1 whole year of being in a fellowship is not easy. As we will say in Nigeria, it's not beans. So well done to you for that. Yeah, and thank you so much, Chiamaka and Julieta, for being with us today.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Well, in that case, thank you to everyone else in the audience that joined. This is the wrap for the day 2 of the Ayoka Fellowship on the Women Empowerment session. Tomorrow is about youth empowerment, and then the day after that, business innovation, and finally health innovation. So ensure that you join in for the other session. So have a wonderful evening, everybody, and see you.